This is Radio Kuwait. The time now is 8 a.m. Kuwait local time, 5 a.m. GMT. This is Radio Kuwait, transmitting on 963 kilohertz on the medium wave for our listeners in the state of Kuwait and the Arabian Gulf area. The local listeners can also receive our transmission on 93.3 megahertz on the FM band. As for our listeners in South and Southeast Asia, we are transmitting on 11970 kilohertz on 19 meter band on the shortwave.
Recite in the name of thy Lord who created. He createth man from a clot of blood. Recite, and thy Lord is the most bountiful. He who hath taught by the pen, taught man what he knew not.
Then he imparted to the people a revelation which he had just received, and which completed the Holy Quran, for it was the last passage to be revealed.
Your religion, and fulfilled my favor unto you. And it hath been my good pleasure to choose Islam for you as your religion. Meantime, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had returned to Abu Bakr, and losing no time they went out through a window at the back of his house, where 2 camels already saddled were waiting for them. The Prophet, peace be upon him, mounted one of a little to the south, on the way to the Yemen, for they knew that as soon as the Prophet, peace be upon him's absence was discovered, search parties would be sent out to cover all the northern outskirts of the city.
When they had gone a little way beyond the precincts of Mecca, the Prophet, peace be upon him, halted his camel, and looking back he said, "Of all God's earth, thou art the dearest place unto me, and the dearest unto God. And had not my people driven me out of thee, I would not have left thee."
Amir ibn Fuhayra, the shepherd whom Abu Bakr had bought as a slave, and then set free and put in charge of his sheep, had followed behind them with his flock to cover up their tracks. When they reached the cave, Abu Bakr sent his son home with the camels, telling him to listen to what was said in Mecca the next day when the Prophet, peace be upon him's absence was discovered, and to bring them word of it the following night.
Amr was to pasture his sheep as usual with the other shepherds during the day, and to bring them to the cave at night, always covering up the tracks of Abdullah between Saur and Mecca.
next night, Abdullah returned to the cave, and his sister Asma came with him bringing food. Their news was that the Quraysh had offered a reward of 100 camels to anyone who could find Muhammad, peace be upon him, and bring him back to Mecca. Horsemen were already following every normal route from Mecca to Yathrib, hoping to overtake them both. But it was assumed that Abu Bakr was with the Prophet, peace be upon him, since he had also disappeared.
Unknown to Abdullah, thought they must be in hiding in one of the numerous caves in the hills round Mecca. Moreover, the Arabs of the desert are good trackers. Even when a flock of sheep had followed in the wake of 2 or 3 camels, the average Bedouin would see at a glance the remains of the larger prints of the camel hooves, which the multitude of smaller prints had all but obliterated. It seemed unlikely that the fugitives would be to the south of the city, but for such a generous reward, every possibility should be tried, and camels had certainly preceded the sheep on those tracks which led in the direction of Thawr.
On the 3rd day, the silence of their mountain sanctuary was broken by the sound of birds, a pair of rock doves, they thought, cooing and fluttering their wings outside the cave. Then after a while they heard the faint sound of men's voices at some distance below them, but gradually they growing louder, as if the men were climbing up the side of the mount. They were not expecting Abdullah until after nightfall, and there was still some hours to go before sunset, although in fact there was strangely little light in the cave for the time of day they supposed it to be.
The voices were now not far off, 5 or 6 men at least, and they were still approaching. The Prophet, peace be upon him, looked at Abu Bakr and said, "Grieve not, for verily God is with us." And then he said, "What thinkest thou of 2 when God is their 3rd?" They could now hear the sound of steps, which drew nearer and then stopped. The men were standing outside the cave. They spoke decisively, all in agreement that there was no need to enter the cave, since no one could possibly be there. Then they turned back the way they had come.
When the sound of their retreating steps and voices had died away, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Abu Bakr went to the mouth of the cave. There in front of it, almost covering the entrance, was an acacia tree, about the height of a man, which had not been there that morning. And over the gap that was left between the tree and the wall of the cave, a spider had woven its web. They looked through the web, and there in the hollow of a rock, even where a man might step as he entered the cave, a rock dove had made a nesting place, and was sitting close as if she had eggs, with her mate
They gently drew aside the web that had been their safeguard, and taking care not to disturb the dove, they went to meet them. Amr had also come, this time without his flock. He had brought the Bedouin to whom Abu Bakr had entrusted the 2 camels he had chosen for their journey. The man was not yet a believer, but he could be relied on to keep their secret, and also to guide them to their destination by such out-of-the-way paths that only a true son of the desert would know. He was waiting in the valley below the 2 mounts, and had brought a 3rd camel for himself.
Abu Bakr was to take Amir behind him on his to look after their needs. They left the cave and descended the slope. Asma had brought a bag of provisions, but had forgotten to bring a rope. So she took off her girdle and divided it into 2 lengths, using one to tie the bag securely to her father's saddle, and keeping the other for herself. Thus it was that she earned the title, she of the two girdles.
When Abu Bakr offered the Prophet, peace be upon him, the better of the two camels, he said, I will not ride a camel that is not mine own. But she is thine, O Messenger of God, said Abu Bakr. Nay, said the Prophet, peace be upon him, but what price didst thou pay for her? Abu Bakr told him, and he said, I take her at that price. Nor did Abu Bakr insist further on making it a gift, although the Prophet, peace be upon him, had accepted many gifts from him in the past. But this occasion was a solemn one. It was the Prophet's hijrah, his cutting off of all ties of home and homeland for the sake of God.
His offering, the act of emigration, must be entirely his, not shared by another in any respect. The mount on which the act was accomplished must therefore be his own, since it was part of his offering. The camel's name was Kaswa, and she remained his favorite camel.
Their guide took them away from Mecca to the west, and a little to the south, until they came to the shore of the Red Sea. Yathrib is due north of Mecca, but it was only at this point that any north came into their direction. The coastal road runs northwest. Towards the Nubian desert, they saw the new moon of the month of Rabi al-Awwal. O crescent of good and of guidance, my faith is in him who created thee. This the Prophet, peace be upon him, would say when he saw the new moon. This daily program, Biography of the Holy Prophet, was written and prepared by Makram Maluhi
And read by
Sheila Ayash
and Sean Toner.
This was a Radio Kuwait production.
Novel coronavirus is an infection made present with mild, moderate, or severe illness that is rapidly spreading around the world. To reduce the risk of spreading the virus, if you have fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical care early. Tell your healthcare provider if you have traveled recently and where to. Because whenever you have fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, it's important to seek medical attention promptly, as this may be due to a respiratory infection or other serious condition. Respiratory system with fever can have a range of causes, and depending on your personal travel history and circumstances, coronavirus could be one of them. If you have mild respiratory systems and no travel history, carefully practice basic respiratory and hand hygiene and stay home until you are recovered if possible. Ensure regular hand washing with soap and potable water after touching animals and animal products. Avoid touching eyes, nose, or mouth with hands, and avoid contact with sick animals or spoiled animals product. Strictly avoid any contact with other animals in the market. Educate your children about the virus outbreak and make sure they and practice basic safety measures and hygiene.
In our minds, if our days kind of sort of sad, then we'll stars. When we're swimming in the stars. Keep me in reach. Hold your breath till we're in too deep where the sun's out of heat. We're awake in the deepest sleep, and we'll stay shades of neon where you and I collide. So let's go swimming in the stars tonight. Oh, and we'll glow and shimmer in the diamond light. We'll dive in first all the way down in gravity's arms. We'll drown the stars when we're swimming in the stars. When we're swimming in the stars. What if we could float here forever? And we shimmer our dreams together. Let me take your breath right now. Promise that I'll never breathe out. So let's go swimming in the stars tonight. Oh, we'll glow and shimmer in the diamond light. We'll dive in first all the way down in gravity's arms. We'll drown the stars when we're swimming in the stars. When we're swimming in the swimming in the stars.
You got these issues, you cry all of the tissues. I love some way to fit you, kinda just wish you never even met me. I don't know what she's yet. Wanna be the one on the edge, but what's killing me the most is how you look at me different. I really want you to know. Don't think it's different. Now you've been saying you don't love without leaving. What's killing me the most is I know that I'm the reason. You say one day I'll realize this all happened in real life, and I'm never getting. I know what I said, but that doesn't mean I don't care. And maybe I'm right. What's killing me is how you look at me different. I really wanna know. Don't even say you don't believe it. Believe it. What's killing me I know that I'm the reason. Is I know that I'm the reason. Hello,
really go home. I don't even know what day you won't leave here. From reflection. Now, but not tomorrow. Wrong still, but not tomorrow. But not leave me hollow.
Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Mama, please don't worry about me. I'm about to let my heart speak. Friends keep telling me to leave this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night, Let's get down to business. Back and forth with the boat. You know I said it before, I don't mean it. It's been a while since I had your attention. So it might hurt to hit it. Stay the same, and I can't do this for another day. So let's get down let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night, one more night. Let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night, Captain. We've had a million nights just like this. Let's get down to business. Oh yeah.
Baby, you should cheat tonight. Just from 3 to 6, be mine. Baby, you should cheat tonight. Skip the politics one time. Why your man let you leave with that dress on? Always sitting at home waiting by your phone. I can't even lie, girl, you look so good. Any man to go home with you if he could. I know that you came to this party looking for somebody. I got a nice diamond, leave a ring on top. Got a nice diamond, leave a ring on top. If you leave with me, shorty, I won't tell anybody. I got a nice diamond, leave a ring on top. Just saying, baby, you should cheat tonight. Just from 3 to 6, be mine. Baby, you should cheat tonight. Oh, what a night. The drinks is cold and your dress fit right. Oh, so tight. It's what I like, you fine like wine. What's your name? Never mind, what's your number? What's your sign?